What is going on, Star Wars fans? Welcome to my official Rogue One, a Star Wars story movie review, the first Star Wars movie to be added onto the anthology. And of course, guys, this video will not contain any amount of spoilers. I will create a spoiler review after this review, guys, because there is a lot to say. And this film I was particularly very excited for because this was going to be the first ever side story being showcased on the big screen. Directed, of course, by none other than Gareth Edwards, the same man who directed the 2014 Godzilla movie, produced by Kathleen Kennedy. This film was surely the exact movie you needed to go ahead and close out 2016. From the visuals to the acting to the story itself, this movie, I believe, delivered in every single aspect except for one. Of course, giving props to Felicity Jones, Diego Luna, Donnie Yen, all of the characters that were portrayed in this film, essentially, because towards the very end, it was very, very sad to see the way everything came to a close. But this was Rogue One, a Star Wars movie. Now, I want to go off the rim here and say that if you guys are looking to be captivated by a great story and just finding out the overall essence of what happened in between movies, this would be the Star Wars movie for you. And of course, I do want to go off the rim here and say that the score of the film was particularly different. It was very, very good. And the battles, I would have to say, in this Star Wars movie was some of the greatest battles I've seen in terms of space combat, in terms of seeing how the AT-ATs functioned. And of course, we have various other characters who I believe definitely made the story that much more intriguing. K2SO, played by Alan Tudyk, was just great because I feel like K2SO was the comedic relief of the entire movie, which was definitely needed, especially during certain acts of the film. And the K2SO is a rebel-owned Imperial Enforcer droid whose memories were wiped out prior. So I want to go off the rim here and say that if anyone's expecting this story to end off differently than how we originally planned it in our own heads while entering the theater is wrong, because this film obviously ended the exact way many people would have to say correlates to the actual film, or at least to the original Star Wars films. Now, the budget to this movie was $200 million, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be earning that money back. Now, before I get into anything else, I do want to talk about Felicity Jones' character. I want to talk about Donnie Yen's character, Diego Luna's character, Ben's character, because these characters definitely spoke volumes as they expressed themselves on the big screen. Now, however, I also want to get into the flaws of this movie because this was not a perfect Star Wars film. Now, obviously enough, Darth Vader is in the movie, and Darth Vader looked so badass in this film. The scenes that he has just brings you back to your childhood because you start to reminisce as to how cool Vader was, and Vader being one of the most synonymous characters in all of movie history. If you were to ask anyone on the street who one of the most badass, villains are of all time in movie lore, they would tell you it's Vader. The only problem I would have to say this movie had was the fact that Vader is not showcased nor shown on the big screen as much as you would like it to be. And of course, it hit me towards the very end after seeing who directed the film, that being Gareth Edwards. Gareth Edwards, the same person who was hiding Godzilla throughout most of the Godzilla 2014 movie. So it sucks to see that Gareth Edwards kept the presence and the lore of Vader a little hidden away, very similar to the Godzilla film, although Vader had some really cool ass moments, in which case I'll explain in my spoiler review, because this is going to be really hard to talk about, non-spoiler like stuff in this video. But Vader does have some incredibly badass moments to where you get to look at him and say, wow, that is the Vader that we've always wanted to see. From the way he was introduced to the way he was battling, I would have to say this was one of my favorite Darth Vaders in all of Star Wars. The obvious story had a few plot holes as well, in which case I will cover in my spoiler review. And I would also say that some of the characters, not all of them, some of the characters I would have to say had little to no meaning on the screen when it came to character development. Now, in Star Wars The Force Awakens, I was able to reflect and connect to most characters like Finn and Poe Dameron, and of course Rey, and the droid, even Kylo Ren. In this film, I was only being able to relate to a few characters and connect to just a very few as opposed to The Force Awakens. So I would also have to say that this movie did not do a perfect job in telling and creating a great story for the characters. I would say that yes, the characters are relatable and likable in the film, but I would have to say The Force Awakens is a film that I would say the audience can relate to and connect to the characters just a little bit more than this film, but overall still managed to captivate, you know, a great story with the characters. Now, another little issue that I had here had to involve the Death Troopers. Now, the Death Troopers are incredibly amazing when it comes to design, but if you watch the film and you pay really close attention, you'll see that their purpose is ultimately defeated as the story goes on. And for that, I believe Darth Vader could have took the role of many of these side villains and ultimately portrayed and done a better job. And again, to me, it boils back to Gareth Edwards being the director, because having a look back on his work with Godzilla, we saw how he kept Godzilla a little hidden away in the film, and that was the exact same thing that happened with Darth Vader, I believe, was the fact that he wasn't showcased nor portrayed on the big screen as much as the audience had wanted to see. I think that Donnie Yen's character was hilarious, but I think that definitely K2SO takes the cake when it comes to comedy, because certain moments in the film when you see you know, Donnie Yen's character have really badass moments and really, you know, kick-ass fights, we see how K2 comes in and he is the comedic relief. And I would have to say one of my favorite droids in all of Star Wars. And of course we had Krennic, who I believe could have done a much better role being a side villain to Darth Vader. I really wanted to see Darth Vader as the primary source of all evil in this film. And of course, Krennic did what he had to do to, you know, impress Vader, to try to show his legion and try to wipe out, you know, the imposing forces that came about. The Death Star itself looked amazingly beautiful. I would have to say the Force Awakens Death Star portrayal was absolutely amazing. We saw how that was, you know, utilized correctly. So the Death Star in this film was done very well. Obviously enough, don't expect to see, you know, any planets, you know, getting blown to hell, or, you know, something extraordinarily crazy happen, because this takes place in between several films of the originals. But the Death Star in this film looked clean and smooth as ever. Krennic, as I said before, was a fantastic lead into this film, but again, I feel as this movie lacked characterization for certain characters, and Krennic was definitely one of them. We see the ruthlessness behind Krennic, but that does not compare to someone like Kylo Ren or Vader, or, you know, the Emperor. So I would say that this particular villain lacked in certain departments. I wasn't able to, you know, look at Krennic and say that he was the vocal point of Star Wars of being a villain, because it just wasn't there for me, at least. Other people might disagree and say that Krennic was great, but Krennic was a very decent, you know, villain, but it wasn't anything like spectacularly crazy. So I wish that Gareth Edwards replaced, you know, Krennic for Vader, because Vader had such a tone in this film. Even though he was shown for a very short time, when he was on screen and he was kicking ass, you felt for Vader. You knew right away who he was and how ruthless he was and how ruthless he can be, which made the film that much better. Now, the ending, of course, guys, was very emotional. And I would also say that this movie kind of answered like an age-old question for Star Wars fans. Of course, once you see the film, you'll understand that, but it was pretty cool to see, you know, how emotionally they were able to do that. And the ending, again, as I said, was very emotional for me, at least. And after having to go into the ending, you know, it made me realize how important this is, and how I wish and I really hope that down the line they're gonna make more you know, side movies and add them onto the anthology, because this movie, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, was completely different from opening to end. But I would have to say that also another thing that I really enjoyed was the way we had our space battle scenes, because I would have to say this was one of the most beautifully done space battles we've seen in Star Wars in a very long ass time, if not probably the best, depending on where you stand with A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back and The Force Awakens and all that kind of good stuff. But the space battles in this film, if you're looking for Star Wars type quality, you know, Star Wars type battles in space, you're definitely going to get that in this film, and you will definitely cream yourself after watching that, because after watching all the events that have transpired on certain planets, and after having to watch the AT-ATs come about and destroy everything, and after going into space and just battling up there, it was beautiful. It was well done, but the only thing that retracted me from the film was the absence of Darth Vader in the majority of the movie. And I felt like Rogue One was a very top-notch sell when it came to advertisement, when it came to trailers, but I would say most of the characters felt a little cooked and a little sluggish and sloppy. and I think that they could have done much better in terms of character development. The movie itself was amazing. I'm not going to say that this movie was complete garbage, but the overall presence of Darth Vader and, you know, having to go back to him, even though sometimes you want to go ahead and move on and you don't want to have to rely on ancient, you know, characters and stuff like Darth Vader to keep the movie afloat, especially having this, you know, take place in between the older movies, you would assume and want to see Vader more often in this film, but the only thing that I would say is Vader wasn't, you know, showcased enough in this film to allow this, you know, character villain to be established well enough in our modern audiences, because there are certain modern, you know, people that live in our generation today who have no clue about Vader or what he does or how he, you know, came to be. There was also another CGI character that I won't really mention a lot in this film, that I believe was okay. I don't think it was entirely needed, I would say, and it wouldn't be like overusing Vader, especially if, you know, we know that he's not going to be in Star Wars Episode 8 and 9 and yada yada going on forward. You know, why not just completely utilize the Vader character in this film, especially during, you know, certain scenes when it was needed for him to be there. But the movie was awesome. The movie was incredible. I enjoyed this film from top to bottom, and making this review was very, very difficult because I tried so hard to refrain from spoilers from beginning to end, because there are a dime of dozen. But leave your thoughts down below. What did you guys think of Rogue One, a Star Wars film? What do you guys think about, you know, comparing Rogue One to The Force Awakens? Do you guys believe that The Force Awakens is better, or do you guys believe that Rogue One is better? Again, the only issue is Vader, for me at least, because he wasn't showcased enough. The Death Troopers were, you know, really, really good as well, but again, just lacking characterization. The Stormtroopers look great too, all dirty and muggy, and they look like they were tired and stuff, you know. It just gave off that vibe like this was, you know, the battle that we've been witnessing for all these years, and we see how, you know, this actually even wore out the Stormtroopers because we see how different they are. And but the only thing, again, I would say that some of the advertisement that was, you know, being showcased about this film wasn't all entirely there. They promised us a lot, and of course the movie did deliver on so many levels, but, you know, I mean, logically speaking, there were several plot holes. The overall emotion was there. The ending will get you guys. The ending will allow you guys to be all emotional because of the way they wrap things up, of course. But tune in for my spoiler review, guys, because that's going to be where all the juice is going to be coming from. And of course, the spoiler review will contain the ending as well, in which case I really, really want to talk about, because it just, I think it really drew the audience in, especially with how captivating it was, and especially with how they managed to seal the deal on many different aspects and elements in terms of, you know, saying what they had to say about the characters and just closing off the story as a whole. But leave your thoughts down below, guys. What did you guys think about the movie? Comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe for more awesome daily content, guys. I hope you guys truly enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you all in the spoiler review, in which we have a lot to talk about. Take it easy, guys. Peace.